Hi guys, I've been playing around with image transfers on raw clay. Now, it's not something I'd ever done, so after a discussion with Sarah, my clay friend, we were on about newsprint and things, and I said, well, normally it's LaserJet and I've got a LaserJet printer, so I'll have a go anyway. It worked a treat, an absolute treat. But I did it on Cernit, so I don't know if it'll work on Primo for one with water, because I just put water on, put the image on, smoothed it over, peeled it off. Worked a treat. So I'm going to do it on Cernit with this butterfly. I'm going to do it on Primo with this tile kind of pattern, and I'm also going to show you how you can do it with Inkjet, not LaserJet. So these are both LaserJet printed. This is Cernit, this is Primo. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to spray a bit of water on them, and I'm just going to rub it in with my finger. Now I know that Cernit will go tacky. I'm not too sure how Primo behaves, so I'm just rubbing some water in. It's not wet through, but there's enough on the surface for a film. And I'll do this one first. I'll just get my image. Oh, and another tip guys, make sure that your paper is bigger than your clay that you want to cut out, because I noticed I'll get a line in the clay, and I've got to put it on this tile because I need to not touch it, make sure it's smooth, and cut my shape out on the tile and then bake it, because if I tried to move it yesterday, it made an unholy mess. Okay, so I've got some water on the surface of this and it's just not soaking in, so I really don't know if this is going to work guys, but I'm trying to quickly spread the water about, and then I'll quickly pop my image on. This may not work on this, and I haven't done any research or anything, so I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, what other people do. I just had to play myself because I've done it many times on what's it called, on wood and other surfaces. Okay, so we've wet that, we've put that on, and then I'm just going to lightly spritz the back, and I'm just going to dab so that the paper goes translucent. Need a bit more on this one. You don't want it wet through guys, because we've got to get it to dry, haven't we? So I'm just dabbing it until the print goes translucent. Excuse me. Okay, I think that's enough. I just make sure it's pressed nicely, and just be gentle and you don't smudge it. Right, I just need to pop this to one side now guys for this to dry off. I'm just going to put it near my radiator so it should dry off pretty quickly. Okay guys, while that other bit's drying, I thought I'd show you the Inkjet way of doing it, and this is a pretty common way of transferring Inkjet ink onto surfaces. Now I'm just using Cernit. I'm going to assume this will work on anything. as long as the surface is nice and flat. So I've buffed a hair in, but we won't worry. Okay, now what I've done is, on a normal piece of acetate, just with my hand, then you can see, on a normal piece of acetate I've printed that sheet out. Now it was a bit daft really, I should have just done single images because it just wipes off. What I'm gonna do is, let's choose this Mad Hatter. I've got plenty of acetate, so I don't mind, because you could just print one image and wipe your acetate clean with a wet wipe or a bit of alcohol, and keep reusing the same piece of acetate. So do not touch this, it's still, the ink just won't dry obviously. So that's Inkjet printed onto plain acetate, not printable acetate, because that'll hold the ink. And obviously if you've got some text and stuff, guys, you need to think about reversing your image. But all I'm going to do is very gently, let's line him up properly so I know he's not going to be off it. I'll start this edge, I'm just going to pop that on the clay and then smooth it through, and then I'm just going to burnish with my finger to transfer the ink from the acetate. I've got an air bubble there. The ink from the acetate onto the clay, and of course you just need to be a bit mindful that it's down flat and that you've not smudged it or anything. But once you're happy and you know there's no bubbles trapped underneath, you can just lift your acetate sheet off. So there we go, and that can just, I'll show you actually, although you'll not be able to see it, will you? Let me move that up. If I put it on this piece of paper, this just wipes right off. Unfortunately I've didn't set my printer to print in black and white, that's why it looks a bit grey. So there you go, your acetate's clean just by wiping it off. So you can reuse the acetate over and over. Again, just be careful you don't smudge, which is why I've put it on a tile. So we could just cut him out with something. Let me find a bigger cutter. We can just cut the Mad Hatter out now. And leave him to bake on the tile. Obviously you could make a little hole if you wanted, or whatever. So that is how you're going to do it with Inkjet on acetate. I'll pop that to one side for baking, and I'll just grab these because I think they're dry. Still a little bit damp. I'll leave them another couple of minutes, guys. Just want to make sure that they're truly dry. This one's just a little bit damp, and then we'll come in. Oh no, I don't want to peel it off in case it's not actually worked. I was a bit slap happy with that one, wasn't I? Yeah, so I'll just leave them another few minutes near my heater just to make sure that paper is totally dry, and I'll be back in a sec. Hi guys, right, I think these are done. It's actually quite warm, that tile, and I'm just going to peel this back so you can see. That's the Primo. Such a lovely crisp image, isn't it? And that's the Cernit. Right, I've not got the best cutters in the world for cutting these out, guys. I've not I did the images about 2.5 inches high, so I maybe need to make the images a little bit smaller. Oh, come off. Just run my finger around that. I think I overbaked it. I think I've baked it a bit on my doodah, on the tile, on the heater. It's gone a bit crackly at the edge, but again, it's just for samples, so it doesn't really matter, does it? And I'll just cut this one out. So there we go. We've got the LaserJet on Cernit and Premo. Just thought I'd do it on both clays, guys, because I wasn't sure if it would work, because I thought it was working because it went tacky, but it's obviously working because of the water, isn't it? Isn't that a lovely clean crisp? Well, they're both very clean images, but, and of course there's the one that I did with the acetate, and the only reason it's grey, guys, is because of how I set the printer. I didn't flick it to black and white, so it's just printed in grayscale, so user error, not a poor print, if that makes sense. So I'll go and pop these in the oven, and then we'll just talk about coatings, because of course that'll run if you use a water-based. This one shouldn't run if you use a water-based varnish. But I'll go and pop these in the oven, and we'll talk about that when they're done. See you in a minute. Hi guys, okay, we're at the oven. So there's our Cernit, there's our Premo white, beautifully crisp images. Again, there's the Inkjet one. It's my fault, the way it's come out grey. It should be very black like this, so just ignore that. I did print another one out just to show you on the same setting. So what we now have to think about, guys, is what we can protect these with, because let me just move these out the way. If we put water on this bunny, I'm just going to squirt a little bit out and drip it on the LaserJet. Not too much of an issue. On the Inkjet, oh, not too much of an issue either. I thought that had really run. So we might be okay with water-based varnishes, guys. I was thinking that it would smudge it. In fact, I'm sure it'll smudge it, you know. But the other thing is as well, somebody had mentioned about using alcohol as a transfer, and alcohol won't budge LaserJet, so I don't think it would work as a transfer, guys, if you used alcohol. You know, if you were trying to put it onto a surface that you couldn't put water on, but water works a treat. Now I'm going to assume that alcohol on this, yeah, there's no issue with alcohol on that either, although it has started to bleed a little bit with the water. So what I'm going to do is, I was actually thinking that if I put a water-based varnish on these, it would smudge them. So I will practice on this one I'll just get a bit of water-based varnish and we'll see if it smudges. I'll get the Sculpey Gloss Glaze. I'll just give it a shake. Like I said, I was assuming it would smudge, but maybe not. Although looking at that now where the water went on, that has started to smudge. So we may need to be careful with this one. Right, let's just put a bit of this on. Find a brush. Okay, so we've got no smudging on that, and I've actually put a bit too much on, so let's pop some on there. So we know that water-based varnishes should be okay. I'm just going to do half of that one because I'm absolutely certain that resin won't smudge it, but you never know. Okay, so we've got a water-based, way too much water-based varnish on this. We'll just smooth some off. Okay, so we've got our water-based varnish. That'll be perfect on that. I'll just smooth this through. Water-based varnish is okay on that. Now let's try a bit of resin. And resin isn't budging that either, which I didn't think it would, to be fair. So we know that on the laser that water-based varnish and resin won't smudge the image, so that's pretty good. So what about this? I don't want to spoil it. Shall I do it on a bit of paper first? I'll try this water-based. Oh god, that's way too much. I'll try this water-based varnish on paper and see what happens. No, it doesn't seem to be smudging it, does it? I'm just wiping it off, guys, just to see if it would smudge. I think it's going to be okay. Let's try it. Try and not put too much on this time, just a little drip. Nope. See, doesn't like it, so I've ruined it. Water-based varnish, although it worked on the piece of paper. Maybe it's because it's absorbed well into the paper. I'll just put a little bit of resin down and give that a, yeah, see, there we go. So resin doesn't smudge it. At least now you know, guys. There's no point doing it half-heartedly, is there? Let me just get a wet wipe because I'm all sticky. Okay, so we now know LaserJet. I'll just recap, guys, because we have gone through quite a bit of stuff, haven't we? LaserJet on copy paper, little bit of water, press it down, bit of water on the back, let it dry off. Then you can varnish it with resin or water-based varnish, and that's perfectly fine. And that's your LaserJet printed stuff. And Inkjet printed stuff, print it onto some acetate, gently apply it to the clay and burnish it down, peel it back off, bake, and only use resin to seal it. I am going to wipe this resin just to see what happens. Yeah, see, you're going to have to be really careful that you don't smudge it, aren't you, till it's dry. So yeah, for your Inkjet images on acetate, just be very careful you don't smudge until you've sealed it with resin. I haven't got any other that might work, you know. That shouldn't affect it either, should it? 'Cause it's not water based. I actually quite like that that look. But yeah, guys, just, you know, be careful with what you're using with the Inkjet. It looks like the LaserJet will stand up to a lot of stuff, and that resin's perfect, isn't it? But the Inkjet is a little bit temperamental, shall we say. So there we go, guys. I hope you found that useful. As I said at the beginning, there's probably a lot of you are already doing this. It's just not something I'd ever done on clay, and I just thought I would do a little film doing both the Inkjet and the LaserJet methods, and then you know what will work and what won't work for you. And it seems to be okay with, if it's working on Cernate, it'll work on Fimo with the water. It's obviously working on Primo. I would assume then that it will work on any of the clays that you're using. Just make sure you've got a lovely smooth surface, and just you know, maybe like I've just done, do it on a tile, then you're not disturbing it when you try and pick it up if your clay is a bit soft. And I think I've covered everything, but you can always ask me a question, guys, if something's not overly clear, and I'll leave it there, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks, guys. Bye.